in page 17, disaster and investigations. And he is also involved in the Malaysian-Thai border graves and also in Australian soldiers in the Commonwealth War graves in Kent. And conduct Malacca this year because a family man, we welcome him to give his experience on that field.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and selamat petang. I am Dr. Muhammad AZAINI. I prefer to be known as a forensic pathologist rather than a forensic physician. I'm also an anthropologist. I was given this topic. At first, I didn't know what to make of it. Touch of the afterlife. It sounded to me like something from the Twilight Zone. But then I thought I'll present MH17 tragedy. It happened and the way I saw it. July the 17th, 2014. It's a date that will be forever etched in our memory, especially for Malaysians. I remember it was during Ramadan. I was getting prepared for bed, and my son woke me up saying that, "Papa, another plane of ours has gone down." My first thought was, that cannot be true, because we had just lost one. It's unbelievable that another one had gone down. So, but he said, "Papa, come look, CNN is covering it." So, as you all know, MH17 was shot down over the eastern Ukraine. 2014 was a Thursday evening, our time, and then, but well, I would say we were lucky because we were prepared in the sense that we were ready for any eventuality regarding MH370. See, after MH370 went missing, the forensic teams in the whole country were geared up. We had set up our own teams. All the equipment was ready in trunks, so that we were able to be mobilized at any given time. And then MH17 was shot down, but luckily, like I said, we were ready. The next day, we flew to Kiev in the Ukraine. Now, this is the area where the plane was shot down. As you can see, it was over a field, basically, yeah, next to the small towns and small villages. The wreckage was spread over a wide area, and then we had, you can see the main structure of the plane, including engine and undercarriage in one area. The tail section was found in another area. The thing about MH17 was that it was a crime. Yeah? It should be treated as a crime scene, but due to its locality, and of course, the scene was contaminated, was compromised from day one. By people, I mean not just the villagers. You're talking about military personnel. And I'm sure you've seen the news. Even BBC journalists were taking, showing photographs of personal belongings and personal effects, taking them from one place and putting them in another place, which is actually compromising the scene of crime. Yeah. So when we've lost that, we've lost a spatial arrangement of items belonging to certain passengers that could have helped in reconstruction of the event. Yeah, we needed, we needed to have those items, nearby the bodies, so that we know where the bodies are seated, seated in the plane. Yeah, so the scene was compromised from day one, from very start. Yeah. But finally, the bodies were brought out of the war zone. I would call it the war zone, because that area was That area was fought between pro-Russian rebels and the Ukrainian government. It was a war-torn area, but finally, army personnel, not just from the Ukraine, but our Malaysian army went there as well and helped to bring out the bodies, one by one on a stretcher, and they were laid by the side of the road. Yeah? Now I remember thinking, I was there in Kiev. It was in the thick of summer. It was July. It was warm. It was hot, and I remember thinking, the longer the bodies stay by the roadside under the hot sun, they're going to get decomposed. The stage of the decomposition is going to get worse. It's going to make identification very, very difficult, if not impossible. Yeah. So all the while negotiations were going on in Kiev as to how and where to proceed with the identification process, the bodies were just put there by the roadside. Yeah, and it was only after a couple of days that they prepared what do you call this, train carriages. Yeah, train carriages, and thank God these carriages were fitted with air-conditioned units to delay or retard the decomposition process. So the body bags were put in this train carriages, but they stayed there. Yeah, they stayed there until the Ukrainian government finally delegated the investigative process to the Dutch government. We went as a team the very next day. Yeah. It was on Friday. We arrived in Kiev very early in the morning, Saturday, and then out of the 23 or 24 people from Malaysians that you see here, 10 had to go back after the decision was made to carry on the investigations in Holland. Yeah. Now, in any disaster victim identification process, there are basically 5 stages, yeah, 5 phases. Phase number 1 is the search and recovery phase, SNR, where the images I showed you just now of the bodies being carried out of the war zone, of the site, yeah, primary site. So that is the search and recovery. It can be any site. In this case, it was a field, albeit in the war-torn area, but it can be anything: collapsed building, typhoon struck area, things like that. So it's basically search, looking for bodies, recover them, and bring them back to where they can be examined. Yeah. Now the second phase is the ante-mortem phase, which runs concurrently with the post-mortem phase. Yeah. So now in this case, the post-mortem examination was done in Holland. Yeah. After 4 or 5 days of negotiation, finally the Ukrainian government said, all right, we will leave the investigation, the DVI activity, the disaster victim identification activity, to the Dutch. So the decision was made on the 21st, I think, was 4 or 5 days after the crash, after the incident, that the decision was made and the bodies were flown from the Ukraine to Eindhoven in Holland, and then to Hilversum, where the post-mortem activity took place. Yeah? Now, the third phase is the post-mortem phase, and then once that is done, once the ante-mortem and the post-mortem data are matched together in the reconciliation phase, that is the fourth phase. And finally, once that is done, the bodies of the victims are released, and then they have the final phase, which is the debriefing phase. Because the tragedy itself being an tragedy of international proportions, you have victims from different nationalities on board. Yeah? It requires a not just multidisciplinary, but multi-agency, multinational cooperation to try to get that together in a space of a few days is an exercise in itself. But we managed to get them, yeah. Basically, they were all gathered in the Ukraine for the first few days. International experts, and then, but we do acknowledge there will be problems because first of the suddenness of the incident. The second thing will be, of course, working with different people from different cultures, different nationalities. There will be problems with language, yeah. All right, and then again, but all this was easily overcome, yeah. Once we respected each other's method of working and the desire to get things done, yeah, the desire to do our best to bring the bodies back, yeah? Not just for us but also for the other nationalities involved. Yeah? This is the team. As you can see, the ones in red are the Belgians. You have the ones in blue are us and the Dutch, and the by then most of the team has gone back. But this towards the end, yeah. But just to highlight the fact that it was a multinational, national cooperation, yeah. Search and recovery phase 1. I'll just skip this one. Apart from getting back the human remains, which is important, yeah, trying to get back the black box, yeah, was also important, where the black box could have, would have held information regarding as to what happened during the flight, yeah. So another team was sent to negotiate with the rebel leader, and finally an agreement was reached, and the black box was finally handed over to the Malaysian delegation. I believe another speaker will speak about that later on. Finally, when that was done, the Dutch government got the go-ahead from the Ukrainian government to release the bodies to Holland, where a full, proper post-mortem examination will be done in view, especially to identify positively the victims of the tragedy. A center was identified where the post-mortem activity was to be done. It was a military barracks in Hilversum, yeah. The Corporal and Outjun Kaserne is a military barracks in Hilversum, and there we had the services of military personnel that helped, and everyone else was involved. The police, yeah. From the Dutch police, the Dutch defense forces, and then we called in odontology experts, fingerprint experts, pathologists, radiologists, statisticians, ICT experts, etc. Now, this is a bird's eye view of the camp itself. It's a town a nice leafy town in Holland called Hilversum. The one circle in red or pink is where it's a used hall like this, about this size, probably slightly bigger, where the post-mortem activity was done. And on the rectangle on the upper one is where the bodies are kept in storage containers. So a schematic diagram of how it was. So this is how it looked like. So you can see those rows of white storage containers where the body are kept. Yeah, and then once they are ready to be examined, They're taken out of those containers and brought into that building. At the top, you can see the roof of that building, where the post-mortem activity is done. That building happened to be empty because it was during the summer, and the Dutch army recruits were not there to use it. So, it was empty. They managed to, the Dutch military personnel converted that empty hall into a proper place where we can conduct a good post-mortem examination. Another view of the containers where the bodies were kept. This is where the two you see on the right are the mobile toilets, one for gents and one for ladies. The tent, the white tent, was where we house our equipment. Yeah, I mean not equipment, our tie-back suits, the white tie-back suits. Yeah. The good thing about having a sort of activity in a military barrack or in a military compound, number one is security. Yeah, only the army can provide that kind of security around the clock, 24 hours a day. And in my view, it should be done that way. If it were up to me, any disaster management, at least in terms of post-mortems, should be done in hospital because it would disrupt the normal hospital routine work. If possible, try to select a place where security can be maintained at all times. Yeah, so this army camp in Hilton was very, very ideal, or within that compound of in the army compound. All right. Now, the bodies arriving from Ukraine, arriving in Eindhoven, a military airport in Holland. The convoy bringing the bodies from the airport to the camp. It still amazes me how the Dutch can manage to get 280 something Buicks and Mercedeses in just a span of a couple of days. It's such an impressive sight. The hearses arriving in the camp, yeah, they arrived in a space of 2 days, if I'm mistaken. Yeah, the authorities, the Dutch authorities, closed the whole road, the whole highway from Eindhoven to the camp. You see the bodies, the hearses arriving straight to the containers where the bodies are kept. We go into the post-mortem phase. Now, disaster victim identification activity, the post-mortem phase, should include certain specialties. By right, it will be led by a forensic pathologist, but in the team, there should be a forensic odontologist, there should be a forensic anthropologist, and you have usually police personnel to take photographs, police personnel to document personal effects and belongings. And before I forget, also the team should include forensic radiologist. Before the body is examined, it will pass through a CT scan, first of all, to identify whether the remains that are put in the body bag is a single individual or what we call co-mingling of remains, more than one. Secondly, to see whether there are any foreign objects together with the remains. So it's all scanned. It's all done during the CT phase before the body is brought into the hall for examination. I remember this CT unit was applied by the British government. So they have a good view of what lies in the body, here in the body bag, sorry. Here you can see a fairly intact victim, yeah. But it's still a singleton. Then the radiologist will provide a comment saying that the remains of a single individual, no foreign bodies, no hazardous material detected. And then after the CT scan, the body passes through the blue tent where the bodies are registered, given a number, yeah, given a serial number, and this one will get that serial number and it goes as it goes along through the whole post-mortem process. This is where the bodies are registered and given a number, yeah, an autopsy number, so to speak. Now, once the body has been given a number, it goes, like I said just now, into the hall, yeah, where the post-mortem activity is to be done. The post-mortem tables are set in such a way that the bodies will have to pass through the fingerprint table first. Fingerprints will be taken from all victims, I mean, if fingerprints are available. After that, the body is brought to the second table where the deceased personal belongings are documented, yeah? Clothing, personal effects, rings, wallets, etc. The third table is the pathology table or anthropology table where samples are taken from bone for DNA. And then after that, the body is passed to the odontology table where odontologists will do dental charting and scanning and x-rays of the teeth to try to match them with anti-mortem data. And finally, you have the quality control personnel making sure that all the forms and everything is signed and dotted and crossed accordingly. Okay, so this is how it looks like. You have five, in our case, in this case, we had five lines, sorry. The Germans ran one line, the Dutch one, the Belgians one, the British and the Australians one, and the Malaysians and the Indonesians we had one line to ourselves. This is how the inside of that hall looked like, where we were just starting to arrange the tables, and this is the you can see photography being done, yeah, of the coffin, and once the lid is removed of the body inside the coffin. The DVI process in full swing, yeah. You see the lines, yeah, the tables arranged end to end. The first table is the fingerprint table. The second table is the personal effects table. The third table is the pathology table. The fourth table is the odontology table, and finally the quality control. Fingerprints are taken, yeah, and then the body is transported to the second table where the body is described, the clothing is described, the personal effects are documented, yeah, and photographed. Each item, no matter how small, is given a serial number, a label, and photographed. The third table, once the body has been, once everything, the personal effects definition has taken place, the bodies are then sent to the table, pathology, anthropology, DNA, where samples are taken for future for DNA analysis. Yeah, in Hilversum, we pathologists sat down and decided that we'll take a sample of the bone, of a long bone, whether femur or tibia. The bone is cut in small wedge-shaped pieces, and then once that is done, the body is then passed to the table behind us, which is the odontology table. the forensic odontologist will do a dental charting, X-ray the teeth, and then finally the quality control people will check to see whether the forms, because we use the poll. I think you're familiar with the Interpol pink form and yellow form that we use for annotation processes. So they make sure that the forms are signed and dated and checked accordingly. Yeah. All this is basically to have post-mortem data to enable us to match with ante-mortem data. And while all that is going on in Hilversum, the team here in Malaysia are collecting data from the next of kin. It is led by another forensic pathologist. So they interviewed, get as much data as possible from the next of kin in order to match that with what we found on the bodies. You see a couple of forensic odontologists looking at, I think, dental chartings and dental X-rays from which the next of kin have supplied from the local dentist here. And finally, when the bodies are identified, they are released. So in total, out of 298 passengers, we got 297. Only one remained missing. This is an old table, but after that another one was found. So the latest I heard was that only one still remained unidentified, missing. So to say that, well, it is a lesson learned. Yeah, it was a first tragedy for us. We learned how to perform a proper DVI activity, and I must say what the Dutch did to me has become the yardstick for all other DVI processes. What we intend to do is we intend to have more drills, yeah, and set up more teams to be ready. So this team shouldn't be set up ad hoc, but it should be ready at any time for any eventuality in case it happens. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad AZAINI, for the chilling reminder of that unfortunate incident. And I'm sure many of you have questions for him regarding this plane incident. So please save some for the Q&A session later. Thank you. Next up, we would like to invite Dr. ABDO KHOURY to share his experiences. And the topic is mass shooting, a European perspective. Kindly put your hands together for Dr. ABDO KHOURY.
I'll introduce Dr. ABDO KHOURY. He's a consultant physician. He is working in the Department of Emergency Medicine in Besançon, not far from Paris. And he is an instructor of disaster medicine involved in European training in emergency medicine disease. And he's a member of the French rapid response team on the disasters. We call it EFRIS. And his main activity now, he's the vice president of USEF, European Society of Emergency Medicine.
Thank you, Eric, for this very nice introduction. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I want to thank Professor Dr. Abu Hassan for this invitation. I'm really honored to be here with you. I'm really proud to be here also and very pleased. It's an excellent conference and I was really impressed by the organization. Thank you all. Yeah. Just sorry, the computer. It's okay. So, as Eric said, I come from France, from the eastern part of France, Besançon. It's a town near the Swiss border. We are like 1.5 hours from Geneva and 2 hours from Paris by train. So we collaborate a lot with Switzerland, we collaborate a lot in transfrontal plans and disaster management plans. And this is my hospital, Trauma Center Level 1, a regional university hospital. I don't have any conflict of interest with this topic, but some acknowledgements and some thanks for lots of colleagues and friends with whom I work from different countries, from Denmark, from Belgium, from France. Some I can show them, and some I have to hide their faces because they work with the SWAT team. So from the 60s, Europe have been threatened by several terrorist attacks. And at that time, these terrorist attacks was much mainly, let's say, local or national. People want to get separated from the country, or people want to have some revendications, but were very, very close to the country and not on the international level. We all remember the conflict between UK and Northern Ireland, which led several bombings, several thousands of dead. But it was at that time like homemade bombs and homemade bombings, and it was more or less, let's say, not spread across Europe, but spread across the Great Britain. And then we have Spain also with the same problem, with the ETA, the separatists. They've done lots of bombing, also homemade bombings, sometimes shooting, but it's very, very, very rare shooting, and the shooting were very directed and targeted to specific people for kid assassination. But what's something new at that time, it was like car bombing, and then got a secondary bombing that when the rescue team will arrive on the scene, secondary bombing will take off, will blow off, and it was problematic for the rescue team at that time. At that time, they were very well organized. There were no dispatch centers, and the teams were rushing like that and coming to the scene and bringing people to the nearest hospital at that time. In Italy, the same. Red Brigade, the mafia, and you all know the huge bombing of the Judge Calfion, who was killed and kidnapped, who was killed by the mafia. And also, once again, it was like small kind of shooting and small kind of bombing. Once again, despite the fact they were very impressive, but we kept with low casualty and a small number of victims. And then came France also with lots of different waves of attacks, lots of different waves of terrorism, from the communists to the Red Brigade, to the conflict in Algeria, to the conflict in the Middle East, to the Palestinian, to lots of things that came to Paris, and lots of bombings and different bombings all over. And we learned some lessons from that time, and we knew how to deal with that kind of issues, or we tried to deal with that kind of issues with that time, especially in the years 90s, 1995, where we had a huge bombing in the metro stations, and at that time we just tried to deal with that, and we just established our mass casualty incident regarding this kind of attacks. And then came 9/11, and from that day, everything changed in the world. Everything changed all over the world. And with several attacks all over, national conflict. And bombing and mass shooting started to have all over the world. And the conflict in Afghanistan, then Iraq, and everything was completely destabilized. And also in our countries, in Europe and all other countries, we start to be destabilized. And you see that throughout the last years, after the Second Iraqi War, and then now after the Syrian War, we're going to have more and more terrorist attacks all over. And the Samam was in 2015 last year. It was very, very dramatic for everyone. So all these attacks, they took out a new face, a new era, a new way of doing, taking hostages in theaters, taking hostages in schools, and with a complex shooting plus bombing. It was something that we weren't aware of and we weren't prepared for. We just saw that in war scenes and in countries in war, and not in countries without war, without any kind of conflict like that. And once again, Madrid, and once again, several bombing on the same day, several sites was bombing, and some of them didn't blow, and the scene was polluted with unstable, unexploded bombs on the scene. So it was complicated also to deal with that, and so it's complicated to deal with more than 1,000 victims on four different sites, and how to rush your emergency system and how to rush your ambulances in one place without keeping some reserve. And that's what we saw in Paris in November, We didn't send all our ambulances, not because it was an instinct, but it was based on other experiences that we got at that time. Madrid also, one thing new, dispatch center were working, and the dispatch were doing pretty well, and especially that we started to use, or started to have with us, psychologists and medical psychological team that were coming to the field with us and taking care from the victim, not from the wounded, but from the implicated and from the person that were very morally and severely stressed, in heavy stress. And this is what was easing the way we were dealing with the victims and we were dealing with the other casualties, and especially with the civil casualties. And once again, London, with several bombings in the underground, and also with another attempt of bombing with 4 bombers that were running in the city and were escaping in the city, escaping the police, and fortunately at that time, it didn't blow off. Otherwise, it would have been also one kind of disaster, once again. And Mumbai is a cornerstone for us. Mumbai was something also new. It was a hostage taking, it was multi-site, it was for several hours, several days. And the new thing is that we got multimodal modal pattern of injuries. And the predominance was, of course, for bullet injuries to vital organ, but something also new that even despite the fact that we are trying to save everyone, we couldn't reach everyone because the scene was unstable. And the terror was still ongoing, and the danger was still ongoing. So some people that we could have saved in other conditions was killed, because we couldn't reach them and we couldn't rescue them on time. And Oslo, once again, one insane person, only one single one, have killed more than 70 persons and wounded more than 300. So it was really something new and unexpected for all of us, and the threat is becoming unexpected everywhere. So this is what the American Corps and USA, because they have some kind of experience in all this. That's what they call it's active shooting, unpredictable, and it evolves quickly. And the new thing is that we should send policemen and should send armed forces to stop this and mitigate harm to the victims. While with bombing, just once you have the bombing, you just have to send your security or your EMS just to take care of the victims. Here you have to take care of the victims, but at the same time you have to stop the killer, you have to stop the shooters, and the threat is always ongoing, and it will mobilize lots of energies and lots of people. And all this started more and more, especially in the last two years, from say to France, becoming by Tunisia, Turkey, everywhere. And more getting victims, and more mass shootings victims, and more injuries with with the gunshot that we weren't at all prepared to deal with that. And came Charlie Hebdo. Charlie Hebdo is a satiric journal in Paris in January 2005. And as our colleagues from Denmark, Freddie Lippert, has said, there was a before and after Charlie Hebdo. And at this time we realized that we weren't prepared at all. We weren't ready at all. We had to face an evolution in the terrorist attacks. We need to work more and more with the police because, as I told you, in Mumbai and others, the shooters are still shooting, are still running in the country, are still in the city. We have to search for them, we have to stop them, and at the same time, we have to rescue people. We need to collaborate more and more with the police. And above all this, we need to change our mentality in doing mass casualty incident and in doing mass casualty preparedness. And once again, 2 days after, with the supermarket and with hostage taken in Paris, in 2 different areas of Paris, on the same time, it was a big challenge for the armed forces and for EMS to deal with all this. And fortunately, we've got little damage. We've got some wounded and some dead, but very little to what was expected at that time. And once again, Copenhagen. And Copenhagen, the journalist was hit, was targeted, and was killed. And the shooter just ran off on a bicycle, like if anyone was just doing his everyday life. And he came back also just to see the crime scene, and he could have shot once again. And of course, Paris in November 13. I want to talk about it. Eric have talked extensively about it this morning. And once again, Brussels, with 2 different sides, the airport and the complex shooting also, bombing, and it was more and more intended to have some mass shootings. And at the same time, train station also, 2 different areas of Brussels, 30 kilometers away, with lots of casualties, 300 wounded, 32 dead, So it was also complicated with some kind of new blast, with some kind of injury that surgeons, even surgeons that were with the military and the war in Afghanistan, in Iraq, or elsewhere, didn't see before. Because the bomb was complex and we have some metal part in the bombing, and when the bomb blew up, they just exploded everywhere. And then Istanbul, with also complex shooting, plus bombing, and Ankara, it's I'm not saying usual, but it's very frequent to have in Ankara, in the bus, having such kind of bombing in Ankara. So all this, we understand that we entered a new era. We entered a new era. We are facing new challenges, and this is something very, very, very new to us. So we got some lessons learned, but I think, and Dr. Keroh is very, very clever in that, and saying that now we have to learn to apply the lessons. Not only we learn the lessons, now we have to apply. So the questions are, what if in Europe we're going to have multiple attacks on the same day in different cities of Europe? Are we able to do things? What will happen? Are we able to collaborate? Do we have any European collaboration? Yes, indeed, we have some. We have what we call the European Union Civil Protection. This is a civil corps that is, we have a European Emergency Response Center that is active 24 hours, 7 days. And this European Civil Protection Center, Emergency Response Center, has several missions. One of them has developed alerts, provide support for assessing equipment and transport resources, and once it gives the alert, give support to our, as a consular support and consular assistance to all European Union citizens abroad, or where the disaster will happen. And also, it will develop a response, a European civil protection response in the frame of the Global Disaster Alert and Coordination System. And how it works, it are several operational units. Every country is responsible for a unit. For example, decontamination of water is for France, let's say rescue and search, it's for Spain, electricity is for England, things like that. They are predisposed, and they were operational in tsunami, the period of tsunami. I don't know what was the feedback at that time. Of course, as we already discussed, Europe to Malaysia, to Philippines, and to this area is very far. So it's not easy to intervene within the first hours. But this module and this European Civil Security Project and response is available at short notice, 12 hours to be operational, and should work independently for at least 96 hours before having supply. And this was created to ensure a European response that is quick and experienced. And as I told you, lots of things, advanced medical posts, field hospitals, medical evacuation, all that stuff, we are ready for doing that. But the question is, are we ready to do that in Europe, in a mass shooting, or something like that? I'm not sure. Second aspect of response is our European medical corps that were created some 2 years ago. And it was much mainly created to respond to disasters, like emerging disasters, emerging diseases, much more than other type of disasters. And these are mainly based doctors and nurses that go, and logisticians that will go there on the field. They will work on the field, and they will help the capacity of the countries that are more or less in need. And especially for Ebola, they worked a lot on that, and they repatriated several people. But are we prepared for dealing with the mass casualty incident and with the mass shooting? And talking about cooperation in Europe, Europe have lots of borders. We are not, unfortunately, the United States of Europe. We are only Europe with different systems. And as Eric told you this morning, we have different EMS systems. Some are doctor-based, some are paramedical-based, and even in disaster, we don't deal with the same thing. Although we have the same frame, we have the same philosophy, we are not dealing with the same thing in the disasters. Adding to that, an example of Belgium, in Brussels. In Brussels, we said that we had multiple site terrorism. No, it was two different bombing for one simple reason, that these two sites that you see, the airport and the train station, are not located in the same area of Brussels. There is one Walloon area and one Flemish area. They speak two different languages, they have two different EMS systems, and they run the things separately, completely separately. So it's like two different countries. So it's complicated. And I'm not talking about Switzerland, which is a federation, and the confederation, and every canton has its own system, and have its own way of doing also. So you see, Europe is complicated. So the first question, are we able to collaborate? We're trying to do so. Second one, are our hospitals protected and prepared for that? Lots of studies and lots of data came out these years that hospitals are more and more attacked. More than 100 terrorist attacks over the past 10, 15 years. Mainly they are bombing, mass shooting mainly armed shooting, but also bombing and suicide bombing. And especially these are more and more increasing with more than 1,200 wounded and more than 700 deaths throughout these last 10, 15 years. So attacks on hospital in the United States, they are ready. They know what that. They are having plans in every hospital, in every county, every department, in every state. They have plans for that. They know how to lock out their hospital. They know how to evacuate their hospital. They know how to protect themselves. What about Europe? In the survey we launched with the Stretch program, it was a program founded by the European Union, and it was a collaboration between the CRIMI, the Center of Disaster Management and Research in Italy, in Novara. We just sent a survey to all the European countries. 40 responders, 13 EU states, and when we asked them, our public and university hospital mainly that responded, when we asked them, are you prepared for that? When we asked them, do you think that the terrorist attack is likely to happen in your hospital? And 80% of them said it's unlikely to happen. And when we asked them, is it likely to happen in your city, in your town? 60% said, no, it's unlikely. And when we ask them, are you prepared for that? What measures did you take for that? For example, do you control people visitors that come to the hospital after the working hours? 20% said yes, only 20%. And do you control them during the working hours? 14% said yes. And if you see all these patterns actually, and all these mass shootings that we have, anyone can go inside the hospital, anyone can go inside the school and start to shoot without without anyone stopping them. So this is what's very important for us and very, very freaky for us. And once again, the question was, are you prepared for that? And did you try to manage this? Did you try to write plans to answer this kind of threat? 80%, 60% said no. And the other question was, if something will happen to your hospital, if the continuity of the business will be insured, and they say 60% of them say no. So clearly, our hospitals in Europe are not prepared for such kind of events. So as I told you, no answers, but some realities, and some realities are very strong, and these are the lessons learned that we are applying. This Copenhagen, this shooting in Copenhagen, the first minutes after the shooting, and you see the bystanders coming to the victim, to the wounded, trying to put some dressing or tourniquet or something like that. They are trying to indicate to the policeman how the terrorists escaped. So this is important. Bystanders are important. Why they are important? They are important, but you know that when you look on the death after injury or after trauma or after bleeding, we see that the first minutes are very important, and the bystanders have a huge role to play here. We won't arrive within minutes, we'll arrive within 10 minutes maybe, and at this time, if the patient is bleeding, if the victim is bleeding, we're going to bleed to death, and we are not able to rescue them. And this what happened in Paris. All people that died before the rescue arrived. But when the EMS and the BLS and the MIQ arrived to these victims, all these victims were taken to the hospital and were more or less treated. So it's very important, the bystanders. And the bystanders, we are training them in France. We started to train them. The citizens are asking for training, are asking for first aid measures, are asking to do some courses on how to react in such kind of event, how to hide our friends, how to escape, how to do things that will help people do a tourniquet, do things, very simple things, but that will help people and that will rescue people and save people's life. Another thing, our triage. Our triage should forget the usual triage that we all learn in all mass casualty incidents. All these start triage and other kind of triage. Such kind of the events are not at all reliable. We should completely change our way of doing triage and going to back simple things. And this is stay and play that some of us say maybe it should be changed to its stay and run, or just scoop and run, or just scoop and you work during the ambulance and just to stabilize the patient. Things have to be changed. We have also to learn from the military. Military have gone through different battlefields, and they have a huge experience in this, huge experience in damage control, and the damage control ground zero on the ground, the damage control surgery in the hospital, and also the damage control resuscitation. And they have lots of things to learn from them, and that's what we learn from them. And Eric told you that this morning. We put tourniquet, we put tranexamic acid, we put lots of things from the military, and we are dealing things differently. Also, we saw that in Mumbai, for example, and in Paris also, we got EMS were about to work in hostile environment, in dangerous environment, and we are not trained for that. What we should do is to train with the SWAT forces. The SWAT forces, especially in France, have doctors with them. But the main mission of the doctor of the SWAT forces or the medics of the SWAT forces is to take care of the policemen, not to take care of the victims. But in the Bataclan and in Paris, we saw that they were obliged to do the triage and they were obliged to take care of the victims. So it was complicated for the two of them with 400 victims to take care of them. And especially that at that time here in the Bataclan, and I think you saw this picture this morning, and you see the medics on the back, on the bottom of the image. There were only 2 medics, and they're trying to do the triage and making people escape very quickly, and just trying to evacuate people the quickest they can. So it wasn't easy for them, especially that the perimeter, the safe zone was very large. So when the safe zone is very large and no one can enter the safe zone, it's difficult to extract victims, it's difficult to manage victims and to save victims that are under fire. And also, we cannot oblige people to go inside and rescue people. This in London. In London, firemen didn't want to go into the train station in the underground because they were afraid that the electricity wasn't stopped. And you cannot oblige them, although the media treated them of coward, all that stuff. It's very complicated to oblige people to go in unsafe zone, in unsafe area. So it's something very, very complicated, and we should work on it. So the question is this our future? Should we work with helmets and with anti-bullet suits like that? I hope that not. I hope that not. I don't want to be my future will be like that. I don't want to go outside the hospital in my helicopter or in my ambulance like that. I prefer to see it in the war zone, and I prefer also not to see war zones, but I prefer not to work in that environment. So what we should do, we should train, we should be prepared. We should be prepared to a different scenario. We should be prepared to CBRN. This is what we are thinking that will be the next attacks. We should prepare to deal with multiple victims, multiple children, and we should prepare on all levels, on the dispatch center, on the EMS, on all the levels of preparedness. Because when you fail to prepare, you are prepared to fail. And this is Pierre Carly, our boss in the Summit of Paris, who always says that. When you fail to prepare, you are prepared to fail. So before ending, just want to invite you to the VADEM conference in Toronto next year, in April. It's a World Congress in Disaster and Emergency Medicine. And you are all welcome to come and share your experience, share your posters, share your abstracts. It's really a very good conference in disaster, and we can all gather there and share our experiences. Because I'm pretty sure lots of us here in this room have lots of things to say and lots of things to share. Thank you for your attention.
Wow, that was an explosive presentation. Thank you, Dr. KHOURY. We'll save the questions for the Q&A session later. So thank you. Okay. Next up, we have Dr. ARIFUMI HASEGAWA, and can we all welcome him with a round of applause?
Welcome to Dr. ARIFUMI HASEGAWA, Professor and Chairman of the Department of Radiation Disaster Medicine, Fukushima Medical University Vice Manager, Radiation Disaster Medical Hospital, Fukushima Medical University Hospital. He is trained as a surgeon originally. He has a PhD in medicine from Fukushima Medical University. He has published many articles and gave talks regarding emergency medicine, critical care, and radiation disaster. He is currently the Professor and Chairman of the Department of Radiation Disaster Medicine, Fukushima Medical University, and Vice Malaysia Radiation Disaster Medical Center, Fukushima Medical University Hospital. He will give us some information or share his knowledge about Fukushima nuclear incident in Japan. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Chairperson. It is my great honor to be given this opportunity to be here today. And also, I'd like to show my sincere gratitude to all of you joining us today for your kindness, support, and thank you to be here in such a late time. Thank you very much. So, I'd like to share my information to simulate and also stimulate from you. So, first, I'd like to quickly overview the Fukushima accident. Then I move on to the health consequences of the Fukushima accident for workers and public from a viewpoint of the radiation and also tsunami. Then I move on to the things we learned from the Fukushima accident. So, as Professor Hassan let us know, we are on a volcanic belt. And also, as you can see, Japan is a curious situation. Huge amount of nuclear power plant on a volcanic belt. It's a character. And Great East Japan earthquakes have happened on the 11th of March 2011. I used to be just a normal emergency and a critical care physician. But immediately after the disaster, I have to face to the unknown nuclear disaster. So, tsunami, as you know, tsunami is one of the Japanese words. In Japanese letter, we describe tsunami as two of these letters. Nami is wave, Tsu is huge and big. The casualties were over the 24,000. At the time, we Japan had at least 54 nuclear reactors, and 35 were in operation just before March 11. So Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant is in a sea-coast area in Japan. That's why hit by the huge tsunami at that time. Only Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant have lost the system of cold shutdown. That's why I'm now focusing on the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. So the first and initial cause was loss of core cooling system. At first, loss of power supply by the earthquakes. So first element is earthquakes. Then second element is tsunami. Because nuclear power plant have huge number of the diesel generator to create the internal electricity. But all the diesel generator have submerged under the seawater. That's why if you try to import the nuclear power plant, please make sure that diesel generator should be high pressure. Okay, please. So we've lost the emergency core cooling system. So that's why there are three elements. One is earthquakes, the other is tsunami, third is plant design. So fission reaction is very curious and strange chemical reaction. One element divides into two elements. And during the fission reaction, it appeared huge amount of power to generate electricity. But fission product will change the stable element with emitted heat as a decay heat. That's why we not only provide the cooling system during the fissioning, but also stabilizing the fission product all day, all night. So the process of fuel meltdown is that. So we lost the core cooling system. We lost electricity. That's why it was unable to provide water into the core. That's why nuclear fuel melted down and melted through, and hydrogen have created as a chemical reaction. Then hydrogen explosion occurred, and at least 3 to 5 victims have happened during the hydrogen explosion. There are contact vessels have drastically changed, as you can see this slide. So, radionuclides have proliferated into the environment, and as a proof, but at the time, rain and snow have made the contaminated soil. That's why you can see the curious and strange contaminated soil map, as you can see this slide. And Fukushima city, it's about 500 kilometers north up from the Tokyo city. So, just now I'd like to compare the Fukushima accident with Chernobyl accident and Three Mile Island. So, the initial cause of the Fukushima accident, due to the one is an earthquake, second is tsunami, natural disaster. But there are some human factors. On the other hand, Chernobyl and Three Mile Island completely rely on a human error. And other things I have to emphasize is there are same character with the Chernobyl accident, because sadly to say that Fukushima accident occurred and induced the soil contamination. But I also have to emphasize, in case of Chernobyl, there are at least 134 acute radiation syndrome cases. On the other hand, there are no acute radiation syndrome cases in Fukushima accident. So, I'd like to move on to the health consequences. First, from the viewpoint of radiation effect. So, there are three ways after damage DNA by the beta ray and also superoxide induced by radiation energy. So, one way is complete repair of the cell. The second way is cell death. The third way is accumulate mutation, then move to the cancer. Okay? And also, I have to emphasize the basic human radiation effect compared with the value of the radiation doses. In case of cell death, grossly about 100 millisievert is one of the milkman of the cell death to induce the acute radiation syndrome. Then about 200 millisievert is one of the milkman to take care of the cancer. So we are now in at least under 100 millisievert. That's why we are in uncertain situation in Fukushima. And also, I found we are now living in not completely acceptable world, but we have to be undesirable but tolerable environment. That's why unacceptable value have been shown by the science. But we have to provide some criteria by the policy. It's a reference level. And at that time, we cannot divide the difference between policy and science immediately after the Fukushima accident. That's why we were very much confused. That's why the Fukushima accident was not only natural disaster, but also compound disaster. It induced confusion among science, technology, society, and policy. So, worker in the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant is working hard in a dangerous situation. But Radiation exposure for emergency personnel have controlled quite low doses. So maximum dose of the worker was maximum 678.8 millisievert. That's why there are no acute radiation syndrome cases to date. And if worker have exposed more than 50 millisievert, safety, but a worker can take the health care, including the cardiac screening and also cancer screening of the gastric and lung and coronary thyroid cancer with the general blood test. As for the examination of the contamination, there are very few contaminated patients, and also the workers' contamination completely reduced during the March 2011, only during 1 month. So after 2011, April 2011, there are no contaminated patients. You can see the distribution of the number of the patient and also the number of workers. And also you can see the lethal cases happening in a nuclear power plant. And half of the disease was due to the endogenous disease, and the half exogenous disease. That's why the patient happening in a nuclear power plant, half of the disease rely on workers' daily lifestyle. And I'd like to show 3 typical cases. Case 1 is the chest and abdominal injury, physically unstable cases in an uncertain situation. So vital signs are unstable, and also we cannot detect the accurate information. In that case, we try to protect by ourselves. Then we have to choose which has high priority, acute care or radiation emergency medicine. And with providing enough radiation protection, we try to choose acute care priority. And case B have the high level contamination in local region. Almost all the cases, vital signs stable. That's why in that case, we try to prioritize the decontamination. And case C is a severe multiple trauma happening in a nuclear power plant. But if we have accurate information, we just choose the examination scene as a usual ER space. That's why all we can do is just do the advanced trauma life support for patient happening in a nuclear power plant. So, radiation emergency medicine completely rely on a screening level. In other words, the contamination level. If patients have contamination that is beyond the screening level, we just prepare the special room called contamination spreading control area. But if patients have exposed extremely high exposure dose, all we can do is just examine in usual spaces. It is one of the essentials of the radiation emergency medicine, I guess. Fortunately to say, in case of Fukushima accident, there are no overlapping cases among severe trauma and sickness and high level contamination and high dose exposure. That's why I have to emphasize again, there are no acute radiation syndrome cases, no overlapping cases, and also, fortunately, no mass casualty event after the disaster. So now, in Fukushima, workers are now facing the new risk. Worker is always wearing a protective coverall at this threshold, and also wearing a airway protecting gear like this slide to limit radiation effect. and like to protective radiation. But such a facility make worker impossible to make good communication from a viewpoint of visual and also hearing and also tactile sensing. And also worker have to face the risk of the severe heat stroke with wearing such a heavy protective coverall. I'd like to show one typical cases. Worker was working under the tank, and a worker heavy metal iron plate of the 390 kilogram have fall down from the top of the tank. The alarm has rigged, but it was impossible for workers to hear such an alarm voice. That's why workers cannot evacuate from the dangerous scene. That's why patients have lied under the heavy metal. And also, this is also one of the typical cases. The worker are working on the top of the tank have fall down via the hole. Worker is wearing a protective belt, but worker was wearing a very heavy coverall. That's why worker avoid fixing a protecting wire on another fixed region. That's why worker fall down to die. And also, it's also typical cases. Worker is working here, and a shield with gradually closing. But worker can't aware the closing shield. That's why worker's neck pinched between the body and a shield. That's why worker died. So I want to say it is not easy to minimize or optimizing the protection here. So Tokyo Electrical Power Company, TEPCO, tried to minimize the protection of coverall and face mask from such a heavy one to easy one with assessing aerial contamination. And also TEPCO tried to provide the saline and also TEPCO reduced the working time from the viewpoint of WBCT. And also try to settle the AED inside of the nuclear power plant now. And also Tokyo Electrical Power Company tried to make a traffic accident map to take care workers moving. And also TEPCO provide the education to all the workers in a nuclear power plant. And also, we physicians try to make communication via the internet during 24 hours. And once patient happen, we can use this connection tool to share the information. So I'd like to move on to the resident. So immediately after the accident, total 164,000 citizens have evacuated from their hometown. Still now, at least 86,000 people have relocated from their home house in Fukushima still now. And government have used huge amount of money for decontamination. Decontamination means scraping the surface of the soil, then move to another area. It is just the essence of the decontamination. This is my house, my garden. Okay. So before decontamination, my dog can enjoy frisbee on a soil. The impact is 0.9 microsievert. But after the decontamination, my lovely dog can't enjoy frisbee. Which is the goal? Which is more healthy? We have to consider. And also, external exposure dose is fortunately controlled quite low dose. And also decreasing year by year. As for the internal exposure dose, fortunately fortunately to say, internal contamination with radionuclides in Fukushima is quite low dose, and also decreasing more and more. So, in summarize, those from external exposure were quite low, and also those from internal contamination were even lower. It is one of the facts. But we have to beyond some indirect death, indirect issue from radiation. One example is death due to the evacuation. Government order acute evacuation. Purpose is, thank you very much, to limit and reduce radiation exposure. But the result is at least 50 or more residents and evacuees have lost their life. It's one of the indirect effect of radiation. After relocation, at least half year, there are the evacuee, mortality of the evacuee have increased at least 2 to 3 times higher, at least during a half year. And my colleague had assessed the risk. So rapid evacuation is danger, at least 2 times danger than 100 millisievert acute exposure. And also evacuee show the various kind of indirect issue. So hemoglobin A1C and body mass index, diastolic blood pressure and cholesterol, none of such factor parameter have drastically increased compared with the non-evacuee. It has strong relations between evacuation, age, sex, and BMI. As for the mental health, the evacuee have faced to the strong stress, quite the same as the firefighter activated at the 911. And also, mental health suicide rate have gradually increased. And also, population aging in Fukushima is drastically. And also, residents have now faced to social stigma for local product. Workers can't sell their local food in Fukushima. Actual food contamination is quite low or none, but worker or farmer can't sell their own product. This graph shows the residents living in Fukushima cannot accept their local food by themselves. Otherwise, the concentration of the concentration value is quite low. I think it's self-stigma. So we are now facing to the another stigma. So in summarize, so direct health effect of the radiation is quite low rather than indirect health effect. As for the from viewpoint of physician, immediately after the Fukushima disaster, we hospital have collapsed because government ordered the evacuation in a radius of 30 kilometers. That's why we organized at least 6 radiation emergency hospitals. But 4 of 6 hospitals have ordered the evacuation. This is a picture of the hospital evacuation. It was terrible. And also, we, disaster medical management team staff, have faced the dilemma because we demand well organized for the acute phase disaster, but we have not well prepared for the severe disaster. That's why we Japan demand have to once evacuate from Fukushima. I was in a year leader of the Fukushima University. That's why I was alone immediately after the demand evacuated. And my supervisor, Professor Otomo, assessed the mortality and mobility ratio of the earthquake. In case of tsunami positive, mortality rate is very high. On the other hand, earthquakes without tsunami, the mortality rate is very low. So in other words, health consequences of tsunami may be all or nothing, I guess. So I have to say again, so Great Hanshin earthquakes happened in 1995. There are low mortality rate. That's why we, disaster medical system team, can perform the role of as a physician. But in case of the Great East Japan earthquakes happened in 2011, there are all or nothing. Thank you. So we DMAT cannot do anything. So we, Japan DMAT, is now very much interested in a new medical needs. That is public health and welfare. Actually, indirect deaths, not due to the tsunami, earthquakes, and radiation, was at least more than 3,400. So various kinds of mortality caused by the indirect impact of the disaster. That's why we have to take care of vulnerable or high-risk populations, especially in a shelter and temporary housing. So actually, we Japan have no improvement during at least 20 years. You can see the shelter, evacuation shelter on 1995. Then you can see the evacuation shelter 2004. And this time, 2011. We can find no change for evacuation shelter in Japan. So, what we've learned from the Fukushima accident is, before crisis, we physicians neither prepare nor have knowledge and skill, lack of awareness. And immediately after the crisis happened, we faced unknown, uncertain, unexpected situation. That's why, before next crisis, we have to prepare as much as possible to reduce the unknown and unexpected, uncertain factors as much as possible. In other words, education is very important to keep awareness, increase learning, knowledge and skill, and also we have to learn more and more about the past experience and history. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. ARIFUMI HASEGAWA, and arigatou gozaimasu. Okay, it is time for the Q&A session, and can we have Dr. Muhammad AZAINI and Dr. Abdul KHOURY to come on stage alongside Dr. ARIFUMI HASEGAWA for this short session.
The floor is open for questions.